It is possible to become free from debt, financial worry, your boss, and your zip code. You can start living a life you love, but first, you need to find your freedom. Using financial independence and lifestyle design principles, you can create the life of your dreams now. There are many paths to freedom, and that is what this podcast is all about. My name is Becky from 20free.co, and I am the host of the Find Your Freedom podcast. What if you never needed to work again and you could still live a life of your dreams? This is possible through a concept called financial independence, also known as FI. When you're financially independent, you don't rely on income from a job to pay for your basic needs or wants. You aren't living paycheck to paycheck. You don't need to spend any time or mental energy worrying about the bills. You can afford to do the things you've always wanted to do when you retire now. In this episode, we'll cover what financial independence is, why FI matters and what it means for your life, how to achieve FI and tips for getting there faster, and resources and further reading on FI. What is the definition of financial independence then? Financial independence is simply the ability to live off of the income that your assets produce. That definition usually generates more questions than answers. First of all, how do your assets produce income? They're just assets. This question really boils down to how do you achieve financial independence? Secondly, who cares? Why is financial independence important anyway? Why are people willing to live so far below their means to achieve this thing called FI? These are the two main questions that I'm going to answer for you. But first, let's set the stage by addressing some common questions and hesitations people have when they think about FI. Is financial independence realistic? Does this sound crazy or unrealistic to you? If so, consider this. Almost all people reach financial independence at some point in their lives. You heard me right. And furthermore, this is actually a highly popularized concept. It's called retirement. First, let me dispel the common misconception that not needing to work equals not working. That's what a lot of people think when they hear financial independence, retire early, or FIRE, but it's just not true. Sure, some people who obtain the financial resources to support themselves without working will want to completely stop working, they'll want to drink Mai Tais on the beach, and they won't want to pursue any additional sources of income, or even work that doesn't pay. On the other hand, that hasn't actually been my experience with the FI community. Most people actually tend to make more money once they're FI for a few reasons. First, they can take risks because they have a financial safety net to fall back on. And big risk can mean big reward. Second, they are more likely to pursue their passions, and the energy and love that someone brings to their work they truly enjoy naturally brings higher compensation. This is meant to be an introduction on the concept of financial independence. Financial independence from what? Ever wish you were born into wealth so you didn't have to worry so much about what things cost? Or so you weren't stressed out by your student loans and you could have paid for your college in cash? Or so you could afford to travel the world like you've always wanted? Or so you could just move out of your parents' house already? I'd argue that what you were wishing for when you wished you were from a wealthy family is actually financial independence. Financial independence gives you the freedom to live your life how you want, regardless of the cost. It means not being stuck. It means not being trapped by a job. It means not worrying so much about financial matters. The most important freedom you gain through financial independence is freedom from dependence on others. If it's your parents, your partners, your employer, whoever, you have been financially dependent on someone else at some point in your life. It feels good to be self-sufficient and no longer rely on others to know that you are financially secure. For a lot of people, they become financially independent from their parents after high school and in college. Then they become financially dependent on a partner's income to provide for a portion of their living expenses, needs, and wants. And often people are dependent on their jobs for their entire lives, at least until they retire, to keep them financially secure. Financial dependence on sources other than yourself can often cause a lot of worry. What if my parents cut me off or kick me out? What if my partner breaks up with me? What if I get laid off or fired? Financial dependence also limits your options. One main benefit of financial independence is the flexibility it gives you to be open to opportunity. If a dream job comes your way that pays less than what you're currently making, you can still accept it. If a great investment opportunity shows up, you can jump in. On the flip side, being financially independent keeps you from being stuck. You won't be beholden to the terrible job that you hate where your boss yells at you on a daily basis. You aren't stuck in an abusive relationship because you can't afford to move out. You don't need to go to your parents for money or move back in with them because you can provide for yourself in a situation where you may have lost a job or a partner. Why is financial independence important? For anyone who still thinks this sounds utterly ridiculous, think of it this way. Most people eventually reach FI in their later years. This is traditionally referred to as retirement. But why wait until you're old and gray and not as spry as you used to be to live the life of your dreams? If you knew the formula, couldn't you hack the system to reach this stage earlier? And this is why I will start with discussing why FI is important. Financial independence is financial freedom. Imagine what your life would be like if you didn't need to go to work for 40 hours a week at a job you hate, or even a job that's just okay. Imagine what you would do with all of that free time, or how you would feel if you didn't have to worry if you could afford something that you wanted to buy, or how relieving it would be to not worry about whether you have enough money to make it through retirement without resorting to consuming Meow Mix for dinner. You would have the freedom to live a life you love, your ideal life. You wouldn't have to waste your time at a 9-to-5 that doesn't let you express your creativity and that squanders your true talents. You could give your gifts to the world. You could practice your passions. The world would be a better place if we all had the freedom to give our unique gifts and do work that was driven by passion. How to achieve financial independence. Financial independence is the ability to live off the income that your assets produce. You are considered financially independent when your assets generate enough income or cash flow to cover your expenses. This process of your assets generating income is called passive income. The phrase passive income comes from the idea that you don't actually have to work or be active to generate this income. As such, this concept is the exact opposite of the typical trade time for money, 9-to-5 corporate job that gives you a paycheck for showing up to work for 40+ hours a week. Some examples of passive income are dividends from stocks, rental income from real estate, income from work products you've created in the past, royalties from songs or books, and residual sales of courses or online products. Now that you know what you need to do to become financially independent, here's the important part. How to become financially independent. The financial independence formula. Really, this is just a 3-part formula. 1, increase your savings and investments. 2, reduce your expenses. And 3, develop diversified sources of passive income. Those are 3 levers that you can pull, and you can pull them all at the same time, or you can pull them one at a time or different amounts. So you can choose to pursue FI by saving more money and spending less, and also by earning more at the same time. You could choose to pursue FI simply by only developing your diversified sources of passive income. How to become financially independent faster. Focus on becoming more intense on your path to financial independence using these 3 factors. 1, increase your savings rate. You can do this 2 ways, by earning more and by spending less. Combine the 2 and you'll have astronomical success. So what you want to do is look at how much you're spending and how much you're earning and increase the gap between those 2 things. By doing so, you're going to increase your savings rate. And by increasing your savings rate, you're going to decrease the amount of time that you have to work until you can achieve financial independence. Number 2, save more where it matters. Stop cutting out lattes and start by managing the 3 largest expenses in your life. What are those expenses? They are housing, food, and transportation. Attack the big 3 and don't worry about the little stuff. A lot of the advice that you see, common personal finance advice, focuses on small purchases that don't have a huge impact on your overall budget. But honestly, focusing on the big three are going to be the best way to leverage the way that you're saving money and make your path to FI faster. Number 3, start a business or side hustle. Craft an asset that will eventually provide passive income for you and will, in the meantime, help with number 1, which is making more money. The more diversified you can be with your passive income sources, the better. But right now, just start with one business or one side hustle and work from there. So, what happens once you are financially independent? Well, life after FI. That's a huge question, isn't it? Once you reach FI, what is there left to do? Plenty. Live your life, enjoy it, but don't just live the same old life you were living, or a life that's shaped by other people's expectations of what your life should look like. Live a well-designed life that you love. This is why financial independence and lifestyle design go hand in hand. And with your newfound freedom, give back. Volunteer your time, donate your money, or practice your passion and share your talents with the world. The world would be a better place if more people could afford to give what they are best at to the world rather than being too exhausted from an unfulfilling job to practice that gift at all. The bottom line is that financial independence is achievable for everyone. Most people get there when they're 65, by default, when they're forced by health or age to retire. The question is, are you willing to work hard to achieve financial independence earlier in life? This next segment, we're going to talk about the basics of financial independence. This includes definition of terms that are commonly used, as well as core concepts related to the topic. First, let me disclaim, the reason I want to cover this topic is because there seems to be a lot of jargon in the personal finance space that can feel like a big barrier to entry for newcomers. It's easier to feel empowered learning about money when we feel we have the basics down, and we're not scratching our heads at acronyms or shorthand that we've never heard before. It took me a long time to learn these terms, and I finally got a hold of a lot of them, and I actually went out and asked a bunch of my peers in the personal finance space, and it ultimately became clear to me that there's still a lot of confusion about what certain terms mean. This can make it tricky and sometimes even counterproductive to try to define terms when there are no universally agreed upon definitions. Therefore, my goal is to provide the ideas behind financial independence concepts and some examples of how the definitions may vary from person to person. The actionable part of this part of the podcast is learn what these terms mean and then decide what sounds right for you. You can tweak these guidelines to fit your personal situation, okay? So let's start with a glossary of sorts. Term number 1, financial independence. Financial independence is when your passive income from your investments covers your lifestyle expenses forever. Shelby Osborne from episode 4 is an example of financial independence. Her passive income from her real estate business covers her basic living expenses. From that, we need to talk about what passive income is. So term number 2 is passive income. Passive income is money that is earned without the direct action of the recipient. This can be investment income, rental property income, or business or partnership income where no active work is required to maintain the flow of money. Term number 3 is financial freedom. Financial freedom and financial independence are often used interchangeably. Some people agree that these terms are actually synonymous. However, others think that financial freedom is a precursor to financial independence. Financial freedom gives you, well, the freedom to not worry about money, to take some risks such as self-employment or taking a job that's passion-based, or taking time off from work to travel, negotiating more flexibility, or stop working at multiple jobs. Financial independence is the far end of the continuum where you are able to retire and never earn another dollar. We will discuss the continuum in a later segment of this episode. Term number 4 is FIRE. FIRE stands for Financial Independence Retire Early. It means that you've reached the point your living expenses are covered by the revenue generated from your investments. That is the classic meaning. But now many people, myself included, who do not plan to retire in a traditional sense, meaning they don't plan to stop income generating work for the rest of their lives, have adjusted the RE, which typically means retire early, to stand for retirement eligible. Not everyone who is financially independent retires early. See Shelby Osborne from episode 4, who is still working to create more investments before she is completely ready to retire. And she plans on working in retirement. An example of someone who is retiring early is A Purple Life, who I interviewed on episode 3. She is retiring this year in 2020 at the age of 30 with $500,000 invested. There are 2 common ways to figure out how much money you need to achieve FIRE. These are 2 rules, and I'm going to discuss the terminology and what they mean. The rule of 25 states that if you multiply your annual expenses by 25, that is the amount of money you'll need to invest for retirement. Again, keep in mind that this is a guideline, even though it's called a rule, and you have to decide what the right amount to invest for retirement is for you. For example, if you spend or plan to spend $40,000 in retirement, 25 times $40,000 is $1 million. Therefore, you need a $1 million nest egg in order to be able to support this $40,000 a year spending in retirement. The 4% rule. The 4% rule is also known as the safe withdrawal rate. It is a guideline that indicates how much you can withdraw annually from your retirement portfolio without running out of money in retirement. It was developed on the basis that a stock portfolio grows 7% annually, and the average rate of inflation is 3%. Since growth is positive and inflation is negative, subtracting that 3% inflation from the 7% growth gives you 4%. The 4% is the average amount that your portfolio has grown, which means that by drawing down 4%, you're not tapping into any of the original principal balance that was invested. You're just taking the growth off the top. When you put together the rule of 25 and the 4% rule, you have a recipe for FIRE. You are also likely to hear many terms that modify the concept of FIRE. Many of these definitions come from Reddit, which frequently provides spending guidelines of specific dollar amounts for different types of FIRE. However, putting exact dollar amounts on a term can quickly become problematic. For example, LeanFIRE is accepted to be a lower monetary amount than traditional FIRE, and FATFIRE a higher amount. However, Kim Kardashian's LeanFIRE would be significantly different than, say, my LeanFIRE. Therefore, I think it makes sense for everyone if rather than saying a definition is based on a dollar amount, it is based on a percentage of your living expenses. Since FIRE itself does not have a universal set amount of money associated with it, and rather it is the amount of money needed to cover your living expenses in perpetuity, typically calculated using the rule of 25 and the 4% rule, then it makes sense that none of the other modified FIRE terms we're going to discuss have a universal set dollar amount on them either. However, there are some commonly accepted amounts which I will mention, though I encourage you to calculate your amount for yourself. If FIRE means you are capable of paying your expenses without the need for paid work at 25 times your annual expenses, then the modified versions indicate how capable you are of doing that. LeanFIRE could be considered having 20 times your annual expenses, for example, meaning you're barely capable of paying your living expenses. You can only cover basic and not discretionary expenses, and you have not built in a lot of flexibility for yourself. Therefore, there's risk. FATFIRE could be considered 40 times your annual living expenses, meaning you're extra capable of paying these expenses, and then some, with room for your expenses to grow and still be covered. Keep in mind that this 20 times or 40 times living expenses are not standardized, defined amounts. Ultimately, even the rule of 25 for FIRE can be adjusted to meet your needs. Maybe for you, half of your spending is discretionary, so LeanFIRE would be half of the multiplier that you would use for FIRE. That multiplier is typically 25 times. I will use an example my friend Military Dollar uses when discussing these terms. To a person who spends $20,000 a year, $2.5 million is 125 times their living expenses, making it extremely fat FIRE. Whereas to a person who spends $200,000 a year, $2.5 million is only 12.5 times their income, making it extremely lean FIRE. So, this is the glossary that we have so far. FIRE can be defined as covering your full living expenses, basic and discretionary. LeanFIRE can be defined as covering your basic living expenses but no discretionary expenses. FYF can be defined as covering your basic living expenses, discretionary expenses, and additional buffer. Throughout these next few terms, I am going to be providing examples of people who exemplify these approaches to FIRE. So an example for LeanFIRE would actually be my current approach to FIRE, which we are not looking to cover our basic and discretionary expenses at this point. We are just looking to cover our basic expenses. FYF, a good example of that would be Physician on Fire. He actually started the Facebook community for it and has some great resources on that. I will provide links to everyone's websites that I've referenced here in these coming definitions in the show notes. That would be at 20free.co/episode 5. That's the word 20, FREE.co/episode 5. Another term is mini retirements. Taking short career breaks, often after saving a sum of money to support yourself during your non-working period. This could be through seasonal work, such as working in the summer and having a whole winter off, or contract work that comes to an end and you take a break before starting another contract, or from simply quitting your job and taking time off before starting another one. Similar to mini retirements are also sabbaticals, which are breaks from work that are often employer-sponsored. This means you are either paid during the time you're not working, or your position is held for you while you are on leave. Two examples of mini retirements are Michelle from Frugality and Freedom. She's actually the guest on episode 6, and M from Radical Fire. Both have taken mini retirements, and they write about their mini retirements on their blogs. Semi-retirement. Semi-retirement is starting to draw down from investments, but still using active income to cover a portion of your expenses. Barista-fi. Barista-fi is where you withdraw 4% of your portfolio to cover a percentage of your expenses and then work at a job that you enjoy, such as a barista, to cover your remaining expenses. It's called Barista-fi because of Starbucks coming out with a comprehensive health benefits for part-time employees, and that being a helpful option for people who are looking to be only part-time employed. Slow-fi. This is a term coined by the pioneers, who have a lot of resources around it, and they define it as when someone utilizes the incremental financial freedom they gain along the journey to financial independence to live happier and healthier lives, do better work, and build strong relationships. If you're interested in slow-fi, which is kind of the foil of regular FIRE, where you're typically working as quickly and as hard as you can to gain financial independence as quickly as possible, slow-fi is a more balanced and measured approach to this. The pioneers have a lot of resources on their website about this concept, and again, I'll link to that in the show notes. Coast-fi. Coast-fi is having enough money invested at an early age that you no longer need to invest any more to achieve financial independence by whatever age you want to retire. The number is the amount saved to fully fund a retirement without needing to make any additional contributions. So to calculate this, you just need to look at what you expect your annual rate of return to be, as opposed to inflation, and look at the compound interest over the number of years from when you have saved that amount to when you plan on retiring, and make sure that that final number based on the compound interest equals the amount that you would need, whatever you decide, if it's 25 times your annual expenses, to support yourself in retirement. An example of this is Trip of a Lifestyle, and I will include a note to their blog in the show notes as well. I think it is helpful to think of these terms as a continuum between living in debt or being financially dependent and having more money than you could possibly ever spend. Those are the two opposite ends of this continuum. Many different bloggers and writers have written about the stages or steps to financial independence. These include the pioneers with their 5 stages of financial freedom, Grant Sabatier with the 7 levels of financial freedom from his book Financial Freedom, and Joshua Sheets with his 7 stages of financial independence. For this discussion, I'm going to quote Get Rich Slowly's 6 stages of financial freedom. Stage 0 is dependence. In this stage, your lifestyle depends on other people for support. We all start here. We're born this way. However long it takes us to break free varies from person to person. You're in this stage if you rely on financial support from your parents. You're in this stage if you spend more than you earn. You're in this stage if your debt payments exceed your income. After you begin to earn a profit, you begin to progress through the 6 stages of financial freedom. The first 3 are the surviving stages. Stage 1 is solvency. Solvency is the ability to meet your financial commitments. You reach this stage when you no longer rely on anyone else for financial support, when your income exceeds your expenses, and when you are no longer accumulating debt. When you're earning a profit, you have achieved solvency. Some people reach this stage in their teens, some never reach it. I reached this stage when I was 21 years old and I graduated from college, and I stopped getting student loans and started to repay my student loans. I reached financial solvency. Stage 2 is stability. You achieve stability once you've repaid your consumer debt, established some emergency savings, and continue to earn a personal profit. You may still possess some good debt, college loans, a mortgage, etc., but you've eliminated other obligations and built a buffer of savings to protect you from unfortunate events. Stage 3, agency. The final surviving stage is free agency, the ability to work and live how and where you want. In this stage, you've eliminated all debt, including student loans and mortgage, and you have enough banked that you could quit your job at a moment's notice without hesitation. This is commonly called FU money. In the 3 final stages, you move from surviving to thriving. Money is no longer a safety net, but a tool to help you build the life that you envision for yourself and your family. Each of these stages either assumes no debt or enough cash on hand to instantly repay your debt. Stage 4 is security. You achieve financial security when your investment income can cover your basic needs. That is, based on how much you have saved and invested, you could live a meager existence for the rest of your life. Even if you never worked another day in your life, you have enough to afford simple housing, basic food, essential clothing, and insurance. Stage 5, independence. Financial independence is the ultimate goal for most people. At this stage, your investment income is sufficient to fund your current standard of living for the rest of your life. You can afford the basics, but you can afford some comforts too. You have enough. Stage 6, abundance. In the final stage of financial freedom, you have enough and then some. Your passive income from all sources will not only fund your lifestyle indefinitely, but grant you the freedom to do whatever you want. You can share your wealth with others. You can indulge in luxury and explore the world. You can build a business empire. Those are the 6 stages of financial freedom from Get Rich Slowly. There are many iterations of these stages, as I mentioned earlier. I am going to link to Get Rich Slowly's blog post on this topic in the show notes. That would be at 20free.co/episode 5. I encourage you to check out the show notes for this because this was such an information-packed episode that I think it would be useful to review the information that was provided, the glossary terms, and also some of the additional resources in a visual format as well as the audio format. I started looking into events I could attend to meet like-minded people, get big ideas, and find my community. That's how I heard about the Financial Freedom Summit. The summit's mission is simple: to help you reach the next level in your financial journey, no matter where you are. There will be speakers and workshops on nearly every personal finance topic, including debt, investing, frugality, entrepreneurship, geo-arbitrage, money mindset, and more. The Financial Freedom Summit is an event for everybody, not just bloggers, podcasters, YouTubers, and other content creators. It's for everyday, regular people who like to talk about money. This is your chance to connect with thousands of other people who have the same interests, goals, and philosophies as you. The event is set for May 1st to 3rd, 2020 in St. Louis. Tickets are going fast, which means that prices will increase soon. But you can lock in early bird rates if you buy your ticket now. Better yet, I have a special discount code that will give you 20% off at checkout. go to www.20free.co/FF Summit to get the special link and discount code for the 2020 Financial Freedom Summit. That's 20free.co/FF Summit. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you're subscribed to the Find Your Freedom podcast on whatever app you're using to listen to this episode. Do me a favor and also leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Go to 20free.co/iTunes to be redirected to the page on Apple Podcasts where you can leave your rating and review. I really appreciate it. If you think this episode would help someone you know, please share it with a friend. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Find Your Freedom podcast. My name is Becky. You can connect with me on Instagram and Twitter at 20freeco and sign up for free resources and email updates at www.20free.co. That's the word 20, FREE.co. I'll talk to you next week on another episode of the Find Your Freedom podcast.